I see couples so often sitting next to each other in a restaurant and both are just watching Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And they're not connecting to the person right next to them, but connecting to everybody else in the world.
You are now tuned into the Misi Muse Unplugged, a pop-up podcast variety show helping consultants along their journey to greatness with your host, management consultant, author and blogger, Christy Lindor.
Hey, my go-getters. Welcome to the Misi Muse Unplugged podcast show. I'm your host, Christy Lindor, thrilled to be bringing you episode 54. And today we're going to do something a little different, go-getters. I wanted to make sure before I ended the podcast show, we talked a little bit about work-life home balance and being able to have a healthy relationship. I know as consultants, we're typically working a lot, traveling a lot. And one area that easily is a challenge for a lot of consultants that I know and has been impacted is people's love lives and being able to have relationships and marriage. And how do you make all of that work? So really excited. I was able to bring a guest on today's show that is a relationship expert. And so I'm excited to introduce Jurgen Schemel. So a little bit about Jurgen. He's actually, go-getters, an author. He's a business strategist from Germany. He's now based in Australia, and he runs a company called Inspiring Relationships. And as part of the things that he does, he really focuses on helping people create and cultivate really successful, healthy marriages, partnerships, and being able to really make sure that your love life is intact and it's a healthy addition to your life. And I think it's such an important conversation. I love the feedback and the guidance that Jurgen brings. So I think you're going to really get a lot from today's show to really help you take your relationships to the next level. So with that, let's get started. So Jurgen, how are you doing today? Welcome to the Misi Muse.
Thank you, Christy. I'm excellent. How are you?
Good. And what part of the world are you currently sitting in?
I'm sitting in Sydney, Australia, on an autumn morning. I think it's 14 degrees outside, something like that. So not too bad, but the sun is not coming through the clouds yet. The background, I'm from Germany, so you can tell by my accent, I can't hide that. I'm from Hamburg, Germany, and moved to Australia 14 years ago.
Oh, nice. Well, welcome to the show. So relationship expert, Jurgen, thank you so much for joining us. Can you pronounce your last name again for me?
Schemel.
Schemel.
Yes.
Okay, Jurgen Schemel. Awesome. Well, Jurgen is a relationship expert. And you know what? Why don't we take a moment and Jurgen, why don't you introduce yourself to the go-getters and tell them a little bit about what you do?
Yes, awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm Jurgen Schemel. I'm 58 years old. I'm happily married for over 25 years. We've got 2 boys, which are now grown-up young men. And for a couple of years, I've realized that relationships are just falling apart, left, right, and center. And not just in Australia or in the US, but also in Germany and all parts of the world. And being a mathematician by trade or by education, the stats are always interesting me. So the stats are shocking because more than 40% of marriages are now getting divorced. So with 25 years of marriage under my belt, I thought, obviously, we are doing something right, maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously. So I then looked into this a little bit further and found that there are actually some tricks and traits which you could have in a relationship, which helps you to have a lasting and maybe a lifelong relationship.
Yeah, I so love that. And go-getters, I thought Jurgen would be a perfect person to bring on today's show because as consultants, one of the things that I've heard time and time again throughout my career are people working extremely hard and really putting a lot of focus on their career, and that sometimes being at the detriment of relationships. I think it's important as a great consultant to balance both home as well as work. And so I think Jurgen as an expert is going to bring some really good tips on how you can really have a fulfilling, and I love the term inspiring relationships. I love that, Jurgen.
Thank you. Yes, if I might shout out to the men out there, because especially the men, they are under such a big stress nowadays. So imagine someone between 30 and 39. Usually they are not working 9 to 5 because they still want to go get something in in their career. So they're working from 8 till 7. And they might have some kids at home and maybe their spouse is staying at home, or maybe she's working as well. But he's under pressure because oftentimes the man also looks after the finances. So the mortgage is on his back. His boss is in his back. His mother-in-law wants to see the children, and his own mother also asks him, when do we see you again? And of course, his wife is saying, you're never home. And he says, well, I'm providing for the money and I'm providing for the family. And all this stress is on the back of the male. And oftentimes we men tend to internalize. So instead of talking about it, we withdraw and we get silent and we kind of sit in front of the television with a bottle of beer and just try to forget the world. And that's the road to disaster in a relationship. Because when you as a male take all this burden on your back and you're not talking about this, then eventually this all bursts. And the usual story is that you meet someone who is nice and blonde and does not demand anything, and then the rest is history.
So with that, I love how you brought that perspective, because, if I look at it from a working female perspective, and I'm newly married, Jürgen, so I'm trying to get where you are, where you've got decades of a healthy marriage.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you. So we're in our third year of marriage. And as a consultant, a working consultant, I feel a lot of the pressures as well. So I know here we work together in terms of helping, balance the bills, and we balance parental responsibilities. And I also, as a female, also have certain expected things that I'm to do to help with the house and with cleaning and with food, on top of working a demanding career. So I think there's stresses for both genders when it comes to relationships to make it work.
Absolutely. And you just described a perfect relationship where you obviously share the load, but oftentimes it's still very traditional that the man is looking after job and career and the woman is looking after home and children. And both are under so much stress in terms of how their role pans out, especially with children then around. So you described it perfectly in dividing those chores between the two of you.
Yeah. So, I noticed you mentioned you realized a long time ago that maybe you and your wife were doing something different. Maybe share a little bit of the background of what was the aha moment you had that made you decide to go into this type of work?
So the aha moment was that a 22-year-old boy who is a friend with my son, told to some total stranger, and I was kind of listening in, and he told a perfect stranger that he just moved countries to help his parents with their divorce. They divorced after 25 years of marriage. And here he was at 22 years old, and he was like totally devastated. And I thought, hang on, so it's not just for a 2-year-old or a 12-year-old that's devastating when the marriage of their parents gets divorced, but also for someone who is already in his own life, starting his own career, starting his own life, having their own relationship. So at 22, he was just beside himself in worries about his parents. And I thought, if we only could have a society where couples would live in loving, intimate, and respectful relationships, we would have so many less children suffering. Another stat for you, 50% of all children in North America witness at least one divorce in their lives.
50, you said? 50%?
50%.
Wow.
So, and also listen to this, at least one. That means their mother or their father, after separation, 5 years down the track, they marry again. And then another 5 years down the track, they get divorced again. Because you always take yourself with you. So you expect that the next relationship is better because she's more blonde, or he has broader shoulders, or he has more money, or she has more money. That's not true, because you take yourself with you. And if you haven't learned about how to maintain a healthy relationship, you won't be successful in the second or third time either. Another stat for you, which is another very, very shocking stat, and that's from Germany, where 70% of divorces where children are involved have one child younger than 2 years old. And that tells you something about our society, that male and female are not coping with the responsibility and the changes in their lives when the child comes around. Suddenly they are just parents and they forget to be lovers.
Yeah.
And that's a big, big step. And oftentimes then the man is missing intimacy or sex and looking somewhere else for satisfaction. And
Thank you for sharing, though. Those are staggering statistics, Jurgen, and it's very unfortunate, but it's very true. And so what would you say are some of the habits that you have found in relationships that help people stay away from those types of statistics?
So one healthy habit is to have what I call an active appointment with your spouse. So because you're living together, you see each other each morning and each night. So see you tonight, darling, or see you next morning. And so there is a routine, and 1 week turns into the next, and 1 month is the same as the last one. And then a year goes by, and out of routine, it moves over into boredom, and suddenly you stop talking. So, and the difficulty is in the beginning, because the moment you move together, you think, we see each other now more often. And the excitement, the dating, the courting, that's missing. So you can bring this back into your relationship by having an active appointment, meaning you put a date in your calendar where you go out with your spouse. So next Friday, 6:00, the phone goes off, the computer goes off, and you go out with your spouse. You could go to the movies, you could go into a restaurant, or you just have a stroll in the city or at the beach, and just the two of you. And keep this kind of appointment in your calendar as if it would be a dentist appointment, and then make it happen. Because so often people living together, but they are living separate lives and they are touching every now and then. But it's these active appointments are helping you to stay connected with your spouse. Because then the most important thing happens, you communicate. Because the talking in a relationship is the most important. If you speak to couples who are married for longer than 20, 25 years, as I did, they all say the number one thing is we talk about everything. We communicate. And by talking, I also mean not just the functional talking, who's putting the baby to bed tonight or who's buying the milk. Because when you're living in a relationship, oftentimes the functional talking takes over. What's for dinner tonight? And could you pass the butter, please? I mean, real talking. What's in your mind? What kind of business project bothers you at the moment? How do we plan our next holiday? How do we plan our finances? All these things only happen, all these talks only happen if you make room for this. And that's why an active appointment is absolutely key.
Now available on Amazon. Management consultant and author Christy Lindor shares career secrets based on 15 years of experience working at top firms in a new book called The MECE Muse. 100 plus selected practices, unwritten rules and habits of great consultants. The MECE Muse provides insights, stories and strategies on the unwritten rules of the consulting profession. Christy conducted research and connected with 50 plus industry titans across 27 professional service organizations on what makes a great consultant. For book reviews, tour dates and more info, go to www.mecemuse.us.
So what about, Jurgen, with people who, like myself, travel a lot for work? And I know a lot of consultants that are either in relationships right now and they're trying to balance that, but they travel a lot. Or I know there's some consultants that want to be in relationships, but haven't been able to solidify anything because of their travel schedule. What type of advice would you give them?
Obviously, then an active appointment becomes even more important because there will be a schedule ahead. So you know where you're back in town and where you have a chance to reconnect. But then really put this into your calendar, both of you, and make it happen. And nothing comes between this. I see couples so often sitting next to each other in a restaurant and both are just watching Facebook or Twitter or whatever. And they're not connecting to the person right next to them, but connecting to everybody else in the world. Especially for people who are traveling a lot and can't see their spouses often enough, these special times, these magic moments are even more crucial to organize and to keep.
Awesome. So we've got that one. Put it on your calendar. Any other kind of habitual types of practices that you could share?
Yes, I'm happy to. So another thing we did, when the first anniversary came around, I said to my wife, look, I don't believe in flowers and boxes of chocolate. Why don't we alternately invite each other for our wedding anniversary? And that became a habit. And for the last 25 years, we're doing this and it is just amazing. So for more or less 4 months in advance, we are kind of teasing the other person, guess what it's be this year and that kind of thing. So we kind of literally kidnap each other, alternating for our wedding anniversary. And that gave us so much fun and so much nice experiences, magic moments, memories, magic memories for the rest of your life.
So let me make sure I understand. So you're saying that, let's say, like I know my wedding anniversary is coming up. It's in September, right?
Yep.
And so you're saying months before that anniversary, you said I would invite my husband to celebrate with me.
Yes. You tell him, keep that date free. Put an appointment in your calendar, but I'm not telling you what it is. And you then organize, it could be a nice restaurant, it could be a theater show, you could maybe go somewhere. I've heard that you have a young child. So you organize a babysitter without your husband knowing, and you organize a special night out just with your husband. And the next year, he does the same for you. So yeah, we did fantastic things. The older the kids were, then obviously the more adventurous we became because the more freedom we had in terms of movements and things. And it's like, I give a list to my wife, this is what you need to pack and bring your passport, and that's it. And then we drive to the airport and she does not know where it's going.
I love that. I so love that. I'm definitely going to use that one.
We told this a lot of couples, and we have quite some followers doing the same thing. And to be honest, these surprises, we all love surprises. We all love Christmas. We all love what's in the box. So that's why I'm saying, so for half a year or maybe 4 months, it's like you don't know what's in the box, but you want to tease the other person. And then once it happened, for the next 4 months, you reminiscence about this special event.
Yeah. That's a beautiful, I love that. And there's just so much I feel like you can do with that. So
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. But you can probably tell that I'm a hopeless romantic person. so that obviously helps.
That's great. That's great. Your wife is extremely lucky woman.
I am too. So, but thank you.
That's awesome. So I know that you came to the show with a freebie. So go-getters, we'll put a link on the show notes for you. But you have a white paper called Top 10 Reasons Why Relationships Are Breaking Apart. Maybe tell the listeners, what can they expect when they look at this white paper?
So obviously, when you Google the 10 top reasons for breakups, you get 15 different responses, and everything is a little bit different. I put my slant on it. I put the top 10 things which I see as crucial. And of course, talking or not communicating is number one in there, as I told you already. And not only do I give you the top 10 reasons, but I also give you a kind of hint what you could do to avoid this from happening in the first place.
All right. No, I love that.
And that's on my website. And the website is inspiring-relationships.com.
And like I said, go-getters, we'll make sure we put a link out for that freebie, for that information. I know that you've also got an 8-week transformational course. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
So what I do as a relationship expert, I give workshops to people live, obviously. But I think this problem is not just a local problem in Australia, it's a global problem. So I wanted to give people access to my tips and techniques through an online course. So I developed an 8-week course, which I call From Stale to Happy Ever After. And it's 8 weeks of videos, 10 to 15 minute video recording, where I introduce you to a model which I think is essential for a healthy and loving relationship. So for 8 weeks, it's a self-paced learning course, so you can listen to this video over and over again. I give you a little bit of assessments to do and exercises. So it is a proper self-learning course over 8 weeks, and I can guarantee that you look at relationships in a different way after completing it.
Awesome. Well, and we'll make sure we put the information in the show notes for that as well. Is that also on your website, Jürgen?
Yes, that's also on my website. Just look for Stay to Happy Ever After and you come to the intro page. That's obviously not a freebie, but I think the investment is absolutely worthwhile.
Right. You know, what's interesting about, your white paper and the freebie and the course that you're creating, as well as the habits that you've shared, they all kind of, to me, there's a key theme, right? You have to put in the work to make a relationship work. It's not that it's an autopilot type of adventure.
Absolutely. If I can tell you one thing after 25 years of marriage, it's daily work. You never can let your guard down. So it's not like, oh, I'm married now, I can behave like a crook, excuse my French. No, you need to stay attractive for your partner. And it's all about self-respect and respect for the other person. How can you behave towards your spouse in a different way than you would do with your best friend?
Right.
You wouldn't do your toenails at the dinner table of your best friend's house, but you do it at home because you're at home? No. There's still someone with you. So respect this other person and just behave as if you would be with your best friend.
Right. This is really, really helpful. So thank you so much. Any last thoughts that you want to share with our listeners?
I'm absolutely certain that together we can change these stats to the better. Instead of having over 40% divorce, that we can really change the world by adopting to some techniques, tips, tools in your relationship and keep working on them. And never forget that it is with you in yourself to stay in a healthy relationship.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the MECE Muse Unplugged, Jürgen. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you, Christy. Thanks for the opportunity.
I think you're doing extremely meaningful work.
Thank you.
So keep it up. And go-getters, thank you for tuning in today. This is Christy Lindor signing out with the MECE Muse Unplugged pop-up podcast. Here's to your journey to greatness.
Tune in every Friday for new episodes syndicated on iTunes, Google Play Music, and many more. Visit www.mecemuse.com for more information.